the cycling podcast in association with Rafa. From grand tours to group rides, the Champs-Élysées to coffee shops, Rafa exists to celebrate the world's most beautiful sport.
Hello, my name's Richard Moore. I'm with Lionel Birnie.
Hello, Richard.
Lionel, we're missing Daniel this week. Daniel's gone back to Mallorca. We'll hook up with him again next week, but we've got a special episode this week, haven't we?
We have indeed, yes. Sort of a lunch with interview.
Well, I don't know if does it qualify as a lunch with when we had lunch and then did the interview?
I think you're right, actually. It was going to be a lunch with.
I think there's strict rules on these things, are there not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's not a lunch with.
Also, I was there to kind of spoil it a little bit, because Lionel's lunch with is normally quite an intimate affair, isn't it?
Yeah, I've conducted a lunch with recently. It was a liquid lunch in the end.
Let me guess who that might have been.
Well, let's keep that under wraps for now.
This is an extended chat with Adam Blythe, the British rider who will join Lotto-Soudal next year. He is an unusual rider in that he's fallen out of the World Tour twice and got back in twice. He was with BMC, lost his contract, came back racing in the UK for a bit, and then joined Orica-GreenEdge. Also went to Tinkoff just before they folded, and then landed at Aqua Blue Sport, where he's ridden the last, almost 2 years. And he's joining Lotto-Soudal next year, primarily as part of the lead-out train, I think, for Caleb Ewan, who he knows from his Orica days. But a very interesting character who's had an interesting journey from being rejected or leaving the British Cycling Academy as a youngster, going to Belgium to try that path instead, and riding for some of the world's best teams with some of the world's best riders. And it was a very candid chat, and really he spoke a lot about some of the wrong turns he's taken and some of the experiences he's had. So we will hear from him in a moment. But Lionel, do you have, please, a news roundup?
Yes, I do, Rich. I will rattle through this so we can hear from Adam Blythe. The Cyclocross World Cup reached Tabor in the Czech Republic. Mathieu van der Poel won the second successive round of the World Cup, and he did so convincingly. So convincingly, in fact, that Roger de Vlamingh, a multiple Paris-Roubaix winner, his brother was a multiple world cyclocross champion. I think won that 7 times. I haven't checked that fact, but Eric de Vlamingh was a multiple dominant world cyclocross champion, so it's a bit strange that Roger de Vlamingh came out and said that Van der Poel's dominance is a bad thing for cyclocross. After 10 minutes you've seen everything in cyclocross nowadays. It's no longer worth viewing, he told Belgian TV. Well, Van der Poel has won every round of the Super Prestige Series as well, and the last 2 rounds of the DVV Trophy, and is going very well in the World Cup. But, cyclocross is a relatively small gene pool, isn't it, in a way? And these kind of eras of dominance do come round. Every now and again, somebody stands head and shoulders above the rest. For a while, it was Sven Nys for a while. Before that, who would it have been? Liboton won several world titles in the late 70s, early 80s. But if the men's races are too predictable, there's always the women's, because the Women's World Cup race in Tabor was a humdinger, particularly on the last lap. Dutch rider Lucinda Brand produced a brilliant late burst to beat Anne-Marie Wurst. The world champion Sanne Kant was down in 6th place. In the men's under-23 event, Britain's Tom Pidcock won that. You mentioned Lotto-Soudal, which Adam Blythe is rejoining this coming season. Their former rider Stig Brooks, you may remember, had a terrible crash in the 2016 Tour of Belgium, a crash involving a motorcycle which nearly cost him his life. He was in a coma and in a very, very bad way. This week he's been back on a mountain bike, did a 40-kilometre ride on his mountain bike. The first time he's ridden a bike since that accident, and he said his next goal is to get back on a road bike. Alan Piper, one of the sports directors at BMC Racing, former Australian rider, is joining UAE Team Emirates, where he will work with, among others, Dan Martin, Fabio Aru, Fernando Gaviria. The UCI president, David Lappartient, has been in the news again, this time giving an interview to our friend Giro Scognamiglio's newspaper, La Gazzetta dello Sport. He has said that the Giro d'Italia could move back a week in 2020 to avoid a clash with the Tour of California. So the Tour of California would come at the start of May, and the Giro would start in the middle, which of course would then close the gap between the Giro and the Tour. Only a proposal at the moment, but it's on the cards. Lappartient also confirmed, or appeared to confirm, that tests for the painkiller tramadol will begin in March, not from January the 1st, as had originally been mooted. So it's likely that the tramadol test will come in time for Paris-Nice. And finally...
So carry on the tramadol until Paris-Nice.
You've experienced of tramadol, haven't you? When your hip was painful, you can vouch for its effects.
I can vouch for tramadol, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can't use it after. Well, I think we'll adopt all UCI rules on the podcast. I think.
Oh goodness me!
No more tramadol, Rich, after March. Sorry about that. Finally, the Aqua Blue sports story has sort of taken another twist. It's ongoing. The fate of the riders who obviously found that their seasons were curtailed suddenly. They are currently relying on the UCI and the bank guarantee that the team has lodged with the UCI in order to get their salaries paid till the end of December. Rick Delaney, the team owner, had said on our podcast that he would cover the salaries of any riders who were unable to get a contract, or he would basically ensure that riders who had a contract for 2019 would be seen right by Aqua Blue. Now, it does appear that in at least one case, Rick Delaney is making good on that pledge. So it's been quite a nuanced story, this one, hasn't it? And Delaney has been, he's been cast as the villain of the piece, but perhaps it is a little bit more nuanced than that.
One other little bit news, Lionel, if I may. John Lalonde is joining Lotto-Soudal as well as the general manager of that team. Marc Sargent remains the big cheese there, but Lalonde, who has an interesting history in the sport. He was the manager, of course, of the Phonak team in 2006 when Floyd Landis tested positive. But he's been around, and he worked for the Tour de France before that. He's been around lots of top teams, and he will start as general manager at Lotto-Soudal in 2019.
Indeed. Finally, very finally, it's the last chance to get tickets for our show at St David's Hall in Cardiff. The show is on Tuesday, the 27th of November, so that's next Tuesday. There are a handful of tickets still available if you'd like to join Richard Orler and me there.
A community around the world. Stories and films with the most compelling characters. The world's finest apparel. Explore the world of cycling with Rapha.
Thank you very much to our headline sponsor, Rapha, as ever. Now, this week I'm going to mention Black Friday. I'm sure you've got feelings and thoughts about Black Friday, Lionel, but it's a good opportunity to grab some Rapha gear, up to 40% off from the 22nd to the 26th of November. So that's from Thursday. We're recording on Wednesday, the 22nd of November. I was out on my bike this morning, actually, and looking at what is going to be available and this is not me, making a plea for freebies or anything like that, in case anybody gets the wrong impression. But I realised after my ride this morning, I'm going to have to get some good winter gloves. I'm looking also at the merino hat. A winter collar wouldn't have gone amiss this morning, I must say. Very, very chilly indeed. So maybe if you're looking for a Christmas present for me, Lionel, Rapha.cc, Black Friday, get on there and pick me up a few winter items, please. Thank you very much.
And no guarantees on that, Rich, I have to say. I mean, normally we don't buy one another gifts at Christmas, do we? I mean, let's be honest.
No,
let's be honest.
It'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But have you received your Rapha down jacket yet?
Explorer jacket, yeah. No, I haven't received it, but I gather it's arrived. What a result.
I mean, this has been a...
Dreams can come true.
It's been a long campaign that you've waged
if you say it
together.
If you say it loud enough and long enough on the podcast, you never know what might happen. So I'm looking forward to taking delivery of that. I wonder what colour I've got.
I'm extremely
I'll
envious.
report back. I'm gonna wear that to a podcast soon, and I might even let you wear it.
Is it too late for me to ask for one? They look great.
I think so. Yeah, you've missed
the boat?
Missed your moment. On the subject of Explore, Lionel.
Oh yes.
You released episode 1 of Explore last week. Very, very good. It's had a really good response from people. It's a different sort of vibe to it, but I really enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed Richard Abraham's interview. He took on the transcontinental race and didn't finish it, but quite philosophical, really, in talking about what he'd been through, and I found that really quite an interesting, even moving in places interview. And I think that was exactly what Explore. These are exactly the sorts of stories Explore has been designed to showcase.
Yeah, the response has been amazing. I mean, we've had so many emails and tweets from people suggesting events that we should cover, stories we should tell in future episodes.
You had a suggestion this morning, didn't you?
I did, Richard. You sent a text saying, would you like me to keep an audio diary of my one-lap ride around Richmond Park? I mean, that is on the long list, but it's really quite close to the bottom for Series 2. I don't think we'll be doing that one, no offence, but we're looking for things that are a little bit more challenging than you pootling around Richmond Park.
We went to Bushy Park as well.
Well, we have had some great suggestions. I mean, I should just say, Series 1 is kind of in the bag, in the can, being edited and put together, polished and honed. So we're kind of full up for Series 1. But Series 2, yeah, keep your suggestions coming. Email us, contact@thecyclingpodcast.com. On Richard Abraham's interview, you mentioned there, Rich, the thing that leapt out at me was when he was talking about describing kind of the moment that he sort of stopped caring, that it stopped mattering to him whether he went on, whether he actually got any further. And I was talking to Mike Broadwith, who is the man who broke the Land's End to John O'Groats record earlier this year. He did that in June. That record had stood for a long time, since 2001, but he broke that record. And he was saying he really identified with the mental battle that goes on in the mind when you're trying to just keep going.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I had that this morning.
I mean, don't try and cheapen my Explore series with your puny efforts. These are inspiring stories by people who...
It was great. I love it. It's you and Hannah Troop are the anchors there for Explore. And what's coming up this Friday?
This Friday we are going down under to Australia. We have got Rupert Guinness, who, Rich, you'll know really well from the Tour de France press room, one of the characters of the press room, one of the nicest men in the press room. People may know Rupert's voice from another podcast, the Cycling Tips podcast that he's appeared on. Almost certainly recognise his byline from newspapers, magazines and the internet over a 30-odd year career covering professional cycling. His trademark is to wear bright, colourful Hawaiian shirts. He's got a different one every day, it seems. And he rode the Indian Pacific Wheel Race, the Indy Pack, which goes from Fremantle near Perth in Western Australia all the way across Australia through the deepest of the outback to Sydney, and that was the event that Mike Hall, the founder of the Transcontinental, was killed in 2017, and the event was stopped, but Rupert and others wanted to go back and start again and complete the ride, partly to honour the memory of Mike Hall, but also to complete the challenge that they had set themselves. And I mean, I've known Rupert a long time as a very kind of upbeat, positive character, and he is an upbeat, positive character, and the interview is upbeat and positive, but there was a real surprise in it for me, something that I just didn't know about him. One of the reasons that he wanted to complete this challenge, and you talk about moving, that was very moving for me. And the other person featuring in the episode is a man called Ollie Broom, who rode from London to Brisbane in 412 days. Now, he had a reason to do that, and a philosophy has developed out of it, and I really enjoyed talking to him. So those are the two subjects in this week's episode of Explore.
Well, while we're plugging things, just before we hear from Adam Blythe, let me mention our final Friends Special of 2018. It's quite an interesting one because we opened up a little sort of competition to our high donors. When you become a friend of the podcast, you can chuck a bit of extra money into our can, and those that pay £100 to become a friend of the podcast, whose support we obviously hugely appreciate, were invited to submit ideas for a Friends Special, and we had quite a lot of submissions. We went through them at the Tour de France. We recorded that discussion, and we picked an idea submitted by Stephen Harris to make a special episode on the title was How to Retire, and it was looking at the subject of retirement and how riders prepare for that and how they cope with it and how they look back on their careers once they have stopped. So lots of interviews in there. Stephen Harris was a guest editor, and he's quite involved. He's been quite involved in putting that together as well. But we've got Fabian Cancellara, we've got Matt Heyman, who's about to retire. We've got Steve Cummings, who's starting to think about what he's going to do in the future. We've got Chris Hoy, who retired a few years ago. We've got Tom Wheelers, who was forced to retire a little bit early. Who else have we got, Lionel? I'm sure we've got Juan Antonio Flecha, who is absolutely fascinating on the subject and talks about it in a way that nobody else did, about the rejection that you feel when you have to retire, because he pointed out that some athletes like to pretend that they've chosen their retirement date and it's all on their terms, and he said the reality is the sport rejects you and it's very, very painful. And I found what he said really interesting, so that will be out next week.
Did you mention Fabian Cancellara?
I did, yeah. I said Cancellara, because you went to interview him.
I did.
He's interesting as well, actually, and that's coming out next week, and it's been really good fun to put that together. And as I say, we're very grateful to all the friends of the podcast. Their support helps us to keep going as well. We will be opening the 2019 Friends of the Podcast scheme very soon. We've got some initial episodes to come out. There'll be the Grand Tour diaries from the Giro, the Tour and the Vuelta from all of us, read in audiobook fashion. They'll be available from early December, so stay tuned for details of that. But as I say, final episode of the 2018 series comes out next week, and you can still become a friend of the podcast at thecyclingpodcast.com. Enough waffle from us, Lionel. Shall we cross over to Adam Blythe, who we met during the London 6 Day a couple of weeks ago. Here he is, Adam Blythe. You're going back to the World Tour. How many teams have you ridden for now? You obviously ridden for Lotto before, but how does that feel to be heading back to World Tour?
Exciting. That's the main thing. I'm excited about it. But I think also being in Lotto, when I was first in Lotto, you never realise how good something is. So when I was first in there, I was Neo-Pro, everything, whatever team you go to, you probably think this is amazing, this is shiny, this is brilliant. But looking back, when I left, man, it was a cool team. It was brilliant. We had Gilbert in there when I was Neo-Pro, Live Horst, Van Avermaet was in when I was stagiaire, Cadell Evans, I was stagiaire when he was world champ as well. Like being a stagiaire when they were around and then joining when Phil was basically at his prime, he had an amazing year. Yeah, best years of my pro career really. So to go back to there and sort of have a fresh start, I think where I'm at in my career is I'm excited to get it done. Yeah, it's
unusual to go back to a former team. Not many riders do it. How did the move come about?
It was a strange one really. I never had a contract with Aqua Blue originally for this next year, so I was always looking for a contract, and it was a random one. I was speaking to Ben Swift. I was out training with him and we were chatting about contracts. We were both looking at the time, and Ben said to me, you should try Lotto. I was speaking to Caleb at the Eneco Tour, and he's joined there, but he hasn't really got a lead out team. So I was with GreenEdge before, rode with Caleb a little bit, and I just give him a call and I said, do you think there'd be any space for me? And he said, I think it'd be good if you could get on board. And then spoke to the team, and that was it really. They welcomed me in. So just a year contract, but it's a year to show that I'm worthy of another year, hopefully.
Going from Rick Delaney's team to to riding with Rick Delaney's son-in-law.
Son-in-law, right? yeah. I need to be careful what I say in front of Caleb.
Well, I wondered, obviously not, but there'll be quite a few riders who have managed to salvage something after the collapse of Aqua Blue. I mean, it's like a game of musical chairs in a lot of ways, and not everyone has made it, have they?
No, I think it's a hard year to be honest. I think cycling in general is getting harder every year without a doubt, but I think this year with the UCI and the ASO putting the teams down to 8, which by the way is ridiculous, it's making teams cut the numbers. If they can take the team from 28 riders down to 25, save a bit of money, pay some bigger riders, why wouldn't you do it? But at the same time, if you've got 2 teams collapsing, which I think there was this year with CCC merging with BMC, but there's a lot of riders on the market, and if there's World Tour riders looking for a contract, it's going to be even harder for Pro Conti riders or Continental riders to get a contract. So it's the brutal world of cycling, as good as it is. A lot of the time, it is a savage world to be a part of.
And where it's worked out for you, there's another British rider, James Shaw, who had his 2 years at the start of his career and has basically gone out the exit at the same team. I mean, staying in the sport is hard, isn't it?
It is hard, yeah. Sport is sport. You've got to be good, or you've got to be good at something to stay in the sport. But I think nowadays, really, you need to be really good at, not really good, but you need to be good at something. You can't be average at everything. You need to be a good domestique, you need to be a good lead-out man, you need to be a good sprinter, you need to be a good climber. You can't be, he's all right at this, he's all right at that. You need to be good at one thing. Even if that's climbing, even if it's helping someone into a bottom of the climb, you need to be good at one thing. And I think a lot of guys, there's a lot of average without being awful. There's a lot of people that are really good at everything, but not really, really good at one thing. So I think that's the way cycling's going now. And you can see it more and more if you watch the Tour. You've got the guys that are literally riding into the bottom of the climbs, job done. You've got guys that are just doing the lead out, job done. Whereas before, you'd get guys that come in to the Tour and they'd be able to do 3 or 4 different jobs, where you don't really see it this day and age in cycling.
So what do you count as your USP?
Oh God, now you're talking. I'm saying I'm economical. That's what I'm really good at, is hiding in the bunch. And for Caleb, keeping him out of trouble really is getting him in the right position with minimum energy. Just using as little energy as you can and hopefully delivering him in that sprint. But yeah, I'd say good morale as well. That's important to have in any team really. I think I'm good for keeping the team upbeat, which hopefully I'll be able to do. But yeah, I will be there in Lotto to help Caleb win bike races.
You are good as well in bunch sprint scenarios. We've seen you up there in lots of races over the years, winning some of them. You almost won a world title maybe a few years ago. Maybe
damn it, Cav.
A bit later, but you can clearly handle yourself in those situations. You were talking to you during the London 60 as well, and you do have a background in the track, and this maybe takes us right back to the beginning of your career.
Wow,
and I was amused to hear that you'd been training for the London 60 with the British Academy, because of course you started off with the British Academy, but with a real diet of Madison training under Rod Ellingworth and stuff. I guess given that this is the role that you now have as a lead-out man, as a guy who can really handle himself and handle his bike, you probably look back on that now. Again, maybe, as you said about Lotto not realising what a good thing it was, do you look back a bit at the British Academy with that view a little bit? No,
I don't know. It's really odd. I don't at all. I was on the British Academy for a short period of time. Where I'd say I learnt my craft was going back. This was like before going to Belgium and that kind of stuff. It's a different craft, I'd say. But I think going back to when I was talent team. So talent team, I joined the Yorkshire squad, whatever that was, and there was Phil West there and Johnny Clay. And obviously they were very good track riders and quite experienced. So I think going on to that, and sort of Westy really, Phil that is, he taught me a lot about track riding. And the nice thing with him was he was just still on the bike, so he could jump on the track and really not show you how to do things, but if you go on a motorbike, it's a lot easier for someone to be next to you on a motorbike telling you how to ride it rather than in your ear telling you how to do it. So I learned a hell of a lot from there. And then when I was on the academy, I was on it for, I think when I was on there, I was technically on for 3 months, but I think I spent 3 weeks in the houses. I wasn't there a lot. So I have nothing to thank British Cycling for about the academy, but before the academy I do, so yeah.
Well, why did the academy not work for you when it did work for obviously a lot of guys?
I just think I wasn't suited to it. I think a lot of people, the academy works for them, and a lot of people it doesn't work for them. And for me at that time, I was 17, just moved out for my parents, obviously, and you know, you're moving into flats basically in the middle of Fallowfields in Manchester, which is student central. You've got a lease of life, sort of, you're free. And we moved in there, and I was with 2 other lads. All the lads are in like 10 metres away in the other houses and everything. And I moved in, and it was just so... I was more overwhelmed with being with the lads rather than being, you're here on the academy sort of thing. And I think it sort of took over a little bit. I was more interested in being social with everyone rather than just really trying to knuckle down on the job. I was still young, so I went in there. It wasn't I wasn't enjoying it, but it was just... I don't think I was the right fit for that, and I knew that in the back of my head. And I think Rod Ellingworth, who was the coach at the time, we didn't get along great then. We get along fine now, but we just didn't see eye to eye basically. So I was almost fighting a losing battle when I went in there, really.
Did you enjoy school?
Looking back, I'd say I did. At the time, I didn't mind it because it was just sort of just what you're doing at school. You just have to do it. You don't know any different, but. Yeah.
I just wondered if the academy maybe felt a bit like school, and maybe that was something you felt you left
No,
behind.
you could sky from school. You can't sky from the academy. You can't miss a track session, can you?
But there's a discipline there, wasn't there? And was the discipline something that you struggled with? Did you resent that? Or? No,
not all. It wasn't a discipline at all. I was never late for track sessions. I was never late on the bike. I did all the training. It was just all the little bits around it. You know, it's very much like Rod's style was quite army style. It was quite black and white, and I'm not really a black and white kind of guy. I'm quite laid back, quite relaxed, which didn't fit that face of the academy really.
It's funny because we mentioned before we were recording, Lionel was at the Ghent 6 in 2007, which I think you won with Peter
we won
Kenyuk.
It. Peter Kenyuk, yeah.
Then I was at the Rotterdam 6 a few weeks later, over sort of just after Christmas.
Yeah.
And you were supposed to be riding out with Peter Kenyuk, but you weren't there.
Yeah.
Ben Swift was there instead.
We did Bremen, and Pete broke his collarbone. So Pete broke his collarbone, and then Swifty had to step in with someone else.
Am I misremembering that? Were you in Rotterdam?
No, Ben did it with someone else.
Ben did it with someone else. So had you left the academy by that point?
I might have done. I did a few stints in there, yeah.
I guess you weren't disappointed, but at the time, I guess already it was starting to be established as a pathway, wasn't it? Did you feel...
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was too early for it to be a pathway back then. I think the guys that have come through the academy would always be where they are now. They've just been speeded up technically, like Cav. The academy has helped him. G, yeah, he's helped him, but them, they'd still be as good as they were today. It might have just taken them a little bit longer to get there, especially G. I don't think he'd have won the tour without being on the academy, but they're still good bike riders. They were still going to win races, and they'd have still been picked up by someone. It's just the British Cycling Academy helped push that along and make it a bit of an easier process for them, I think.
So tell us what you did after leaving the academy, because you ended up in Belgium, but what was your path there?
So this was a tough one. So I went to Belgium. I was 17, left home, flew into Tim Harris. Phil Griffiths set it up for me, actually, who used to run Pinarello in the UK. He called Tim because he knew him and just said, look, I've got this English lad here, can you help him out, give him a place to stay? And I applied for Rayner funding at the time, and they declined me. So they said, no, you're not getting any. So I was like, bloody hell, because when I'd left the academy, they just didn't want to have anything to do with me because they thought I was a bad egg. So I applied for the CTTC funding, got that, and it was 250 quid a month. Moved to Tim's, and it was 250 quid a month rent.
Convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
Tim's got it sorted, hasn't he?
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, just went there, and Tim knows Rod really well. So all that Rod really had to say about me wasn't great things. So Tim, I came in, he was sort of expecting this, everything Rod had said about me, and moved in with Tim a couple of weeks in. It was just Tim's one of my best mates to date still, he's a brilliant guy and we really get along, and he sort of introduced me to the world that I'm in now, really, and he taught me. At the time, I didn't really know what he was trying to teach me or anything, but he taught me a lot. And I remember when I did my first year there, and I was in a little team, I remember I got a jersey, 2 jerseys, 2 pairs of shorts, and that was it. No bike, no nothing. And my first 3 months living in Belgium, I had an old Trek bike from when I rode for SIS before the academy. And for some reason it snapped on the top tube. There's a big crack in it. But obviously I couldn't afford to buy a new one, 250 quid a month. So for, I think, another month and a half, I rode with a knife, a steel butter knife, duct tape to the top tube to try and stop it bending. And eventually, I think I won one race on it with it like that, and then Griffo sent me an old Pinarello, just a second-hand Pinarello, and spent the rest of the year on that. But this is the difference between the academy these days, and I think that's why it's a good thing, but it's also quite a bad thing for the young lads. You know, you go into the academy and you're a professional straight away. You've got everything there. You've got physio, you've got shoe fittings, you've got, you name it, they've got access to it. Go to Belgium, what have you got? You've got 250 quid to pay your rent, which I had, and then after that you don't have anything else.
A knife taped to your top tube.
Exactly. So after that, so when I was living in Belgium then, I wasn't getting any more money, so Tim basically said, you need to go win races. So win races, that pays for your food, that pays for everything that pays for your life basically. So he just like listed me off this big calendar. Well, his wife did, Joss. She listed me off this big calendar, and I'd just go every week. I'd go race 4 times a week if I could, 5 times, whatever. And that brought me on so much, learnt me how to race, taught me how to race in Belgium. And, you know, I got into it then in the first year. I think it was like the last 2 months of the season. I was getting good. I was winning quite a lot. I think I won like 6 kermesses in Belgium or something. And there's a very renowned guy called Guy Schmet. I don't know if you've heard of him. You probably will have. King of kermesses in Belgium. He was famous for winning like the most kermesses in 1 year in Belgium. It was like 52 kermesses or something, but not knowingly, he'd pay riders off. So this is one of the things Tim taught me. It's like you go to a kermesse, get in a break with Guy Schmet, pull through hard with him, do your work, and he'll probably offer you a bit of cash. And I remember doing, I think it was like 2 weeks worth of kermesses. And I think I made almost like €5,000 off of Guy Schmet, which is brilliant, you know. He's like a young lad, didn't have the money to pay for whatever it was, and just doing them races, you know, win your money, you earn your living. And that was how I put through it, and that's what Tim taught me. I remember him to this day telling me cycling's a business. That's all it is, that's all it still is to this day. You have to remember that. It's not, you're not in this sport because you are you can be, you're an exceptional rider, you're a good rider, whoever you are, you still have to be good, but you have to remember this is a business. Everyone in this bike business is here to make money, and that's all it is. And it stuck with me, and it is what it is this day. But going back to the academy, that's what you don't get on the academy. You don't learn that, you don't do that. And we were speaking about Jimmy Shaw earlier. I remember when he moved to Belgium, he didn't do one single kermesse. He was really good, still is to this day, but he didn't go and do a single kermesse off his own back. He only did team races, and you know, he might have learned a little bit about how to be selfish in bike races. He might have learned how to flick a few riders here and there and say, you know, Jimmy, you've got this job to do today, and yeah, you do it, but you remember the day after where you might have a chance, you know. So it's not saying that he wouldn't be in this position, but he might have learned a little bit differently on how to race as such. So
Tim and Joss kind of teach you about the jungle and how to survive in the jungle, but within a sort of safe overall environment. You know, you can always go back there after the races and kind of got somebody to talk to about it. Exactly,
it was a home away from home, and being with Tim especially, he knows a lot of people. He speaks Flemish, and it's just mainly that lifestyle of living with Tim, and you sort of have to earn your keep. I remember one day he'd go and do a kermesse, and the next day Tim's got a chair business, and I'd go and paint chairs for like 50 quid for the day. So I'd go and paint a load of chairs for him, have a day off, then get back out on the bike, and it's just, that's the way it was. You sort of earn your keep, and very different to modern days, I'd say.
They obviously look after lots of riders. Now, you were actually living in their house, weren't you? Not in the other house that Tim...
Yeah, I spent the first year and a half living with Tim and Joss, and then they eventually booted me out. I think they got fed up with me. And then I went to live in another house around the corner of theirs, and it was just, you get a few people coming and going, you get the usuals that would come in and do a few kermesses. Thinking
who else was there at the same time as you?
There was a guy called Dan Shand, who is now Joanne Rousel's husband. Joanne Shand Rousel, sorry. He was there. Bibby came in for a stint. At the time, Lizzie, who was my girlfriend, she lived there every now and again, and a few other riders that I can't really recall.
Did Tim come out training with you as well? He had stories about he said that the training that you did as a group and sometimes with him involved as well was pretty full on, and you know, when it came to sprinting for signs and so on, it wasn't unheard of for there to be, you know, crashes, elbows. So
the main thing with Tim is he wouldn't say this to you and he wouldn't make it, but he'd take you out. He wouldn't take you out on the bike. You go out on the bike with him, but it would be a fun ride. It wouldn't be... This is a problem these days. Power meters have ruined everything. You go out on the bike and you just ride. You ride along, you sprint for the town sign, you sprint for the province sign, you do all this. And
Having fun.
Having fun, technically, yeah, which you look back on it, and sprinting for a town sign now is doing an actual effort. And if someone said to you on a piece of paper, you have to go out and do 6 sprints, you'd be like, right, I'll go out and do 6 sprints. Whereas if you went out on the bike with Tim and you had to sprint for 20 town signs, you wouldn't even think about it. So it was just that sort of taking the edge off of it as being serious, very serious still, but at the same time, it was just good fun. But yeah, we have a thing called Death Ridge in Belgium, a little ridge in the middle of the road and on the side of the road. Of course, it catches millions of people out a year probably, but yeah, never get down the ridge. And town signs were a thing, but yeah, he's flicked me down the ridge a few times, and there's been a few crashes sprinting for town signs for sure. This was a competitive thing. We went out and we were racing.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
Seb Piquet there, the voice of race radio at the Tour de France, reminding us to tell you that this week's episode is sponsored by ShipStation. Now, ShipStation, North America's #1 e-commerce shipping software, is also now available in the UK. And now that the holidays are almost here, you know that online selling is going to get crazy. If you're selling online, you want to get your orders out quickly and keep your customers happy. That's where ShipStation comes in. Manage and ship all of your holiday orders from one simple online dashboard. But it's not just, Lionel, for big companies, is it? You are a user of ShipStation now yourself.
Well, I'm a publishing mogul.
Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot about that.
I was just going to say holidays, Christmas. Come on. It's Christmas, isn't it? Everyone's looking to buy stuff for their loved ones at Christmas.
I'm just reading what's in front of me, Lionel.
Well, that's fine. I've got to say, one of the downsides of this time of year is the number of orders I have to dispatch, whether it be to individual customers who've ordered things on my website or from the big wholesalers who stock books and then distribute them to Amazon and bookshops and all the rest of it. So sometimes I'm sending out one book at a time, sometimes it's boxes of books, sometimes it's large consignments of books if things are going really well. But ShipStation enables me to basically put everything all in one place, so I can book the right courier for the right job. It's hooked up to Royal Mail, Hermes, DPD, DHL, UPS, FedEx and more. And basically once your order comes in, you select the right courier for the job, you print out all the labels, and pretty much that's it. It's a one-stop shop for dispatching stuff. And I've hooked it up to my website, which is run by Squarespace. I think it hooks up to all of the big websites. So whether you're selling on your own website or on eBay or Amazon, it makes it really quite straightforward. And well, you know me, Rich, I get flustered, don't I, when things are complicated and going wrong. So I like the simplicity of it, that's for sure.
Well, as a listener to the Cycling Podcast, you can try ShipStation free for 30 days, plus get a special bonus when you use the promotion code CYCLING. To take advantage of this incredible offer, just visit ShipStation.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in cycling. That's ShipStation.com, then enter the promotion code CYCLING. ShipStation.com. Get ship done. Back to Adam Blythe. And then you turned pro in Belgium with Lotto, as we said earlier. How was that? I mean, and how big a step up was that when you made it?
Looking back on it, it was just incredible. I did a year in the team with a spoon, with a knife taped to my bike, basically. And then I went into like a feeder team, technically, for Lotto. And yeah, at the end of that year, I was a stagiaire. I did a few Italian races with Cadell when he was world champion still, which was pretty cool. And then they signed me after that. And yeah, just going into that environment in 2010 was Gilbert was there, Live Hoster was there still. So it was very quite old school Belgium, which I'm thankful for, because I'd say they were my best years as a pro. It was just at that time, 2011, where everything started getting modern. So it was sort of like the very last year, I'd say, of sort of that old school era of cycling, which, yeah, it was very cool to be just a part of that transition.
You say you are an old school cyclist? Is that how you would describe yourself?
No, not really. I'd say I've got I don't know what I'd describe it. I've grown up in cycling, and I think when I turned pro, it was just that last era, so I kind of understand it a little bit, but you can't be an old school cyclist anymore. You have to be modern, you have to have a power meter, you have to have a heart rate monitor, you have to have your trading peaks and all that stuff. That's the way cycling's gone now. So I don't think you can be an old school rider. I'd say a really old school rider is Alexander Kristoff still. He still goes out and does the big 8-9 hours, but even that's becoming modern these days. People are still doing that training today, but it's just becoming modern. It's not old school anymore.
And you seem to forge quite a friendship with Philippe Gilbert. You went off to BMC with him as well.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Did you two just click? Because you're quite different types of riders, but what was it there that...
So when I was neo-pro there, they took me into the classics. They were just like, let's see how he goes, and the first classic I did was Ghent-Wevelgem. And it was a good day, it was a nice day out, but my job was just to protect Phil, where I can protect him for as long as I can. And I think I did a good job, I must have done a good job, 'cause the next week I was in Flanders. So we did that, and I just basically helped him move around the peloton. And I think it's rare that you find a guy that you have confidence in, where you don't really have to think about stuff. So I was that guy to Phil, and that's how it came around, really. We just got along really well, and that was that.
That was his incredible year.
2011 was his
2011 was the year,
yeah.
But 2010 pretty good year for him as well.
I don't think it was bad. I think he had the yellow jersey.
2011 he was unbeatable.
He was unbeatable. It's unbelievable.
What was that like to be around somebody who was in that sort of form and really at the top of the sport?
Funny. It's really, the only way you can look at it is funny. You go into a race and literally every race he stepped into he won. We did a kermesse, and we were in a break. It was like a break of 20. It's just like a local pro kermesse. And I was in a break with him, and he was like, right, I'll lead you out. I was like, right, okay, brilliant, here we go. And I remember it was like 2k to go, and there was 2 corners, and we went into this. It was a really tight corner. He went in first, and Guillaume van Keersbroek, he was in quick step at the time, was behind him, then me. And he came out that corner, and he just kicked, and he gapped Guillaume at the time, and he just got like 20-30 metres, and that was it. There's like a full bunch sprint behind him, but no one could catch him, and he just held on for the win. And that was like a kermesse, the most random. There was really good riders there, but if you looked on paper, you wouldn't ever say Phil would probably win this. It'd just be a race that he'd be up there, but not winning. And it was just like going into that, you'd look like, how can you do this? It's ridiculous. So that just stemmed from winning this, and this, and this, and this. It got to the point where you're just like, oh, Phil's here, so it's another bit of money, prize money in the bank, or he's just going to win this. It's just like, it's like having Peter Sagan in your team now. If you've got Peter there, you're in with a good chance of winning. So, yeah. But then looking back on that, when I was, that was my second year pro, that it got to be not normal, but you just get used to it, really. So, yeah, very, very cool time to...
And then you went to BMC, a very different type of team, I guess.
God, yeah.
Is that a move now that you regret making?
Yeah, I do, yeah, at the time. I did it, generally, Phil was going there, and they offered me to go there as well, so I said, yeah, I'll come for sure. And it was, when they were just starting, it was an incredible team, really, still is an incredible team. But yeah, looking back, like I said, I didn't know how good Lotto was until I left. And that was the same thing. It was just absolutely incredible, but you don't know until you've left it, really. So BMC was good, an experience. They really took on the trying to be a modern team, which they successfully did, I think. But yeah, it was just not... I just couldn't ride as well as I could at Lotto, basically, there. So,
do you know why? I mean, because they've had, as you said, trying to become a modern team, and we've heard stories about them being quite rigid in terms of how people ride, not having the... I think Lotto, even to this day, are a team where riders seem to be able to express themselves individually more.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main problem was with BMC, it wasn't anything to do with the team, it was more myself in that period of time in my lifestyle. I moved to Monaco then, and yeah, I lived my uni years in Monaco getting paid quite good money, and a bit of a regret looking back on it. But yeah, that was it, really.
Enjoyable at the time, or...
Oh, yeah, God, it was very enjoyable, yeah. I had a great time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were, I guess, mixing in, I think, F1 circles, and, did those people like Jenson Button and people like that, did they become friends and training partners?
They did, not so much training partners, but it was just, you get there's rich people and there's really rich people, and they were really rich. But, you know, if you can afford to go out for dinner and it just gets the normal to whatever you spend, if it's €100 or if it's 300, 400, 500 euros, it almost becomes the norm. And it is not normal whatsoever in this day and age. It's not. But back then, when you're earning good enough money to do that, it's just something you don't really think about doing. You just carry on doing it as usual. So,
is that because you think you're on a kind of a trajectory that's always going to keep going up, I guess?
Yeah, of course you do, yeah, but things come crashing down quickly. So yeah, at the time it was never really something I thought about. I was still quite young and just riding my bike, which I love, living on the Côte d'Azur, amazing, going out with Jensen Button, cool, Paul de Resta, you know. It's just very, looking back, you're like, if you told this story about, oh, I went to Monaco, lived there, this, that and the other, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool, which it was very cool at the time, but I just didn't commit enough to my cycling basically when I lived there, and that was it. And that wasn't due to anything other than myself, really.
Was there a moment when you realised that, you know, and was it then too late to change course again?
No, really. I went from BMC to NFTO, and I still lived in Monaco then, and it wasn't so much that I was like, oh God, I need to get my act together, this, that and the other. It was just, I was still happy. And I think that's all I've really concentrated on, is being happy. And yeah, loved NFTO. Then I went to GreenEdge, and then from GreenEdge just going into Tinkoff. That was when I met my missus now, and that was when, you know, started to calm down, settle down a bit. We had our party times together, but now, yeah, we've got a little boy, and things have changed massively.
2 more on the way.
2 more on the way, yeah. It's going to be busy.
Stepping back to NFTO, I mean, you must be aware that people on the outside are looking at that as quite a downward step at the time. Did it feel like that?
Yes, it did, but it also felt like a stepping stone for me personally. I think, you know, you look at it on paper, anyone looks at it, he's gone down to NFTO, that's it, he's done, he's going to be in the British scene now. But it's like going back to Belgium. Like I said with Tim, this is a business. You have to remember everything you do is business in cycling. So if you are good, win bike races, people will remember who will win bike races. And if you can win bike races, bike teams always want people who can win a bike race. And that's stuck with me to this day. You've still got to, you know, if you don't perform, you don't get a contract. It's, no matter who your agent is, they're not miracle workers. So yeah, NFTO, it was sort of like just enjoy cycling again. And I got into it, and I was doing crits, and I went back there with a mentality of, not with a mentality, but I'm better than everyone here. And if someone's beating me, they shouldn't be beating me. I'm better than them. And I went back, so every race I did, and even if I was getting a kick, and I was like, I'm not, they've got to be suffering a lot more than me because I'm better than them. And for a while, I did the Tour series there, and I hated it. I was just getting a kick in every week. And I was just trying to train through it all the time. So I was like, it'll come. And then just at the end of it, it was coming to the end of the Tour series, and then Ride London came around, and we went into Ride London. I was just happy to be back in a big race with all my mates, Swifties, Gilbert there and everything. I was not expecting to win that day. I was expecting to be good, but to win, no. And yeah, going into that is still to this day probably the best race I've ridden for myself, you know, just doing everything right, correct. And it was like, oh, I'm still good at this, I can do it.
You obviously knuckled down. I mean, did that come
Weirdly though, no. I just raced. I just raced a lot, did a lot of crits, and just enjoyed riding my bike.
For nice meals in Monaco?
No, a little bit. But the thing was then, I enjoyed going out on my bike. I loved it because the racing I was doing it, I was getting better, I was winning, and that really it made bike riding so much easier. So it wasn't I was knuckled down. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to win there. I knew I was good, but it wasn't a case of I'm going to knuckle down and win loads of races. I was just loving going out on my bike and just cracking on with it and getting on.
I mean, in those, when you're at BMC and not performing as you were capable of performing, did anybody take you aside, either on the team or someone like Tim, take you aside and have a word with you? Or
a little bit to a point, but it was just a case of they did a little bit, but it wasn't so much. I wouldn't listen to them really. I was just in my own world, and yeah, I don't think whoever told me to get my act together, it don't matter who it was, I wouldn't have taken it really. It was just,
I mean, it's quite a familiar story. There's a lot of riders who've had a couple of great years and got the big contract, and then sort of not committed to it in the way that they had to get to where they were. But these people very rarely come back, you know.
Yeah.
It generally ends badly. You got yourself back into the World Tour, not once but twice.
Yeah, cat with 9 lives. Yeah, I don't know what to say really. I think, like I said, I think if you're a good bike rider, you win it's not that I'm saying I'm an amazing bike rider, but if you win bike races or show that you're good at something, I think there's always, you just got to keep yourself in the market. And yeah,
you know, making a living and the business of bike racing. NFTO, I mean, what did you know about them? What did NFTO stand for? And you know, what were your views on the guy who was paying all the bill?
Not for the ordinary is what it was. So yeah, John Wood, still a friend, still a very nice guy, still a great guy. He just took me. He was very straight with me. He was a good lad. He's a good laugh. Had a lot of fun with him off the bike as well. We had a great time together, and I think that's another good side of it, is that we really got on, and it made life a lot easier for me. I stayed with his house, get on with his wife, his kids, everything like that. So he's just a really nice bloke, really. But yeah, even to this day, he still looks after me in little ways, you know, just make sure I'm all right like that. So he's, looking back at that team, it was a fun team, and it was very much, I made a lot of friends in there rather than colleagues.
Richard makes a point, you came out of the World Tour, got back in, came out and got back in again. And the 2 times you've kind of come out, these projects have been run by quite high profile people who've created a profile for themselves off the back of cycling. I don't want to say that they were sort of hobby projects, but people putting their money into their passion. So
yeah.
Was there something about those 2 projects that appealed to you?
At the time with John and NFTO, it was a case of I had nothing. So it was go to John, I didn't have another contract, and what he offered me, it wasn't anything amazing, but he just offered me what I needed, and it was just a case to get back on my bike and enjoy it. And it wasn't about the money, it wasn't about anything other than just getting back on my bike and having a good time, which he did, and he made sure I had a good time, and he never put pressure on me to win. He always just wanted me to have fun, basically, and he did that perfectly. And yeah, it's worked out for the best, really. And then after that was GreenEdge, which was good fun. And after that, what I really loved was riding in Tinkoff. I think that was a great team, but it's unlucky timing that Tinkoff was pulling out when I went in there. So that was that.
Maybe a bit like, I don't know if it was similar to your role at Lotto, especially looking after Gilbert. I think at Tinkoff you were signed, were you not, to help Sagan?
Yeah, I wasn't. It wasn't in like my contract, and it wasn't really mentioned you're there to help Sagan. It was just as the will be to help in the classics, and you will be there to help Peter a little bit. So yeah, I just went in there looking forward, really. I was really excited to be in a big team, a massive team at the time. Contador was in there, Sagan, it was huge, and it was an experience, and I absolutely loved that team. It was fantastic. All the kit, all the bikes, everything was just brilliant, you know. And even Tinkoff, having that owner of the team, he's mentally complaining about someone's salary, saying, what is the minimum pay for all this, that and the other? And he's like, we can't pay these guys this much. But then you go and order like 20 grand's worth of wine for dinner, and you're like, you know, that's half of minimum salary there, mate. You could not buy that and just pay someone a little bit more. Needs my money.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport. Fueled by science.
Thank you very much to our sponsor, Science in Sport, for their support of the Cycling Podcast. You can still get 25% off all your Science in Sport nutrition products. Go to scienceinsport.com and enter the code SISCP25. That's SISCP25. Now, this week's question for the Science in Sport experts, in this case Ben Samuels, comes from James West. Dear Cycling Podcast, my dad is in his late 60s and still an avid cyclist, but he's a bit old school in his approach to diet, particularly post-ride. He normally gets back from a morning ride, 25 to 40 miles at a 14 to 15 mile per hour average, and opts for a bit of soup, a slice of bread and a piece of fruit for lunch, and then nothing until dinner, other than a cup of tea maybe. I think his concern is putting on weight and this impacting ability to go uphill at a reasonable speed, despite me pointing out that not eating enough will make him slower due to decreasing muscle strength no matter how much cycling he does. He's not likely to ever start consuming sports nutrition products regularly. Sorry, Science and Sport. Although exceptions have been known after a particularly long ride or if the weather was particularly hot. He's always going to eat normal food. So what should he be eating for the rest of the day post-ride to maintain/improve muscle mass whilst not gaining weight? Many thanks, James West. Over to you, Ben Samuels.
The concern of additional weight gain when balancing training, performance and body composition is a common one, and as endurance-focused individuals in a power-to-weight ratio-dominated sport, it's a question we get asked a lot. When we have an additional factor here of the increased protein requirements within ageing populations, optimising nutrition intake post-ride has the ability to significantly improve performance. With your specific goal of maintaining performance and improving muscle mass, protein feeding through the remainder of the day should not be compromised, and in particular, a serving post-ride is advised. He should be looking to get 3 to 4 high-quality feedings throughout the day, so one with breakfast pre-ride, then 2 to 3 servings for the rest of the day, aiming for 20 to 30 grams of protein each time, eating a balance of carbohydrate, fat, fruits and vegetables alongside this.
Yeah, I mean, GreenEdge, you were there, obviously, just quite briefly, and I think when you joined that team, it seemed like a natural fit in a way. It seemed like, from the outside, again, that was a team that, it was before it became the team that it is now, I think, with this Grand Tour focus, and it wasn't really clear what it was, I guess, at that time. Was that your sense?
Massively, yeah. I think they were focusing on Caleb because Caleb was getting good, but they were also focusing on the Yates because they were getting good, and Bling was still in there, and Guerrero was still in there as well. So there was very much a lot of riders which were capable of winning races. So they really had to, looking at like the Yateses, they can win races. Esteban's here, he can win races. Bling and Guerrero, we need to sort that situation. Caleb, right, that's that. So I think they just didn't have a clear picture of what they wanted to do, and they couldn't invest all the money into one thing when they had these amazing other bike riders there. So when I was there, it was good. It was still very much an Aussie team then as well. There was a lot of Aussies there, there's a lot of Aussie staff, still is. But I think the year after, they sort of said, right, we need to have a clear out and start again, and let's make our focus on the Yateses and what it is, and that's why Caleb's obviously left.
And how was it working with Sagan? How well did you get to know him?
Well enough to sit down and have a coffee with him, but he's just, what you see is what you get with Peter. There's no beating around the bush. He's not different to what you see him on camera. He's just very normal, very relaxed, and a proper bike race. You know, if you see someone on TV this day get beat in a sprint, they go and pat you on the back, oh well done mate, yeah, I was second, sort of thing. Whereas Sagan would go past and he'd be pissed, you know, he'd get back in the bus and punch the seat and just really have a bit of a tantrum for about 10 minutes. And that is what bike riding should be. It's not be like, oh well done mate, yeah, you beat me, congrats. It should be like, no, you idiot, I hate you, sort of thing. And Chip Lean used to be like that. He'd never go across the line and beat someone. He'd always like swear at him or something for beating him, which it's rare these days. You know, everyone's such good buddies and good friends that you don't have any enemies. Whereas back then, I don't think you had enemies, but you were proper bike racers. You know, you had competition and you made sure they knew that sort of thing.
Is it going soft?
It's just different. There's no chief. There's no boss in the peloton where someone comes along as there's timeout anymore. It's just modern cycling these days. It's far from soft, really, when I think about it. It is very much full on, full gas 90% of the time. So yeah, it's just different.
You're starting to sound like an elder statesman, Adam.
I know, I feel like I am.
I mean, the experiences you've had, you know, the teams that you've been on, there can't be many riders in the peloton who've ridden for as many of the world's best teams and with so many of the world's best riders.
Yeah, I don't think so, and I think that's why I get along with quite a lot of people. I can say hello to pretty much everyone in the peloton because I've been in pretty much every team. But no, it's a nice thing to do. You know, a lot of guys, they grow up in the same team and they've got their friends who they've, you know, been around them a little bit. But I think it's nice to be able to go and speak to pretty much anyone in the peloton and have a general chat about them and their lives and what's going on. So yeah, it's silver linings and all that.
What, I guess if we look at your career, your ability, what you seem to be able to do is pick a target and raise your game. I mean, I remember going to the Vuelta last year, you know, your team got a wild card, not a lot was expected of them. You told us in Nîmes after the team time trial, I'm gonna win tomorrow.
Yeah.
You were not just there to sort of be in the bunch sprints. You were confident you could win, and I think we were surprised. I remember talking about it at the time. We were surprised to hear such bullish talk. You don't hear that very often. I think you were third. Were you not on that?
Third, yeah.
Third in that stage. 2 quick step riders ahead of you. You might have been disappointed with that at the time, but results like that, not many riders are maybe capable of doing that.
No, I got a kick in for the next 3 weeks after that. But no, I think, like I said earlier, you've got to win something. If you don't win anything, what's the point of being a bike rider or doing something good? And I've always seen that you can be crap 90% of the year, but if you're good for 10% of the year, who cares? But if you're really average for 90% of the year, you end up just being average, don't you? It's one of them things. So I think, yeah, you've got to have your targets, everyone does, but I think going into that Vuelta, I knew that stage particularly, that was like one stage that I really could do well in, and after that it was it was a tough welter, so I didn't really have many chances where I was super confident in. So yeah, you just got to go all in, and that's what I did for that day. Luckily didn't come off with it, and I was pissed off at the time, I'd say, that I didn't win, but it's bike racing, it's not like that, is it? You can't win them all.
And one of the best examples of, I mentioned it earlier, but of, seeing what you can be capable of was that World Championship in Doha in 2016, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2016.
Talk us through that finale, because it was you and Cavendish there, right in the thick of things. Yeah,
tough one. It was a strange one, that one. I knew I'd be good there. I was quite nervous before it, but if there's one thing I can do confidently and say I can do confidently is riding crosswinds, and Cav knew that. That's why I was there, and there was me and him that made it into that front group. Luke was there, but he punctured sadly, just it was splitting. But yeah, it was just a case of, it was a really tough one, that one, because the group was only like, I think 30 of us big at the time, so it wasn't like, and it was a parade after the crosswinds, and it was split. It was literally just sit on the wheel, try not to be in the wind, try not to be in the wind, try not to be in the wind. So it was really weird, because it's like, normally in that situation you'd all sit as a team, because only two of you. I was just like, right, find the biggest guy, sit behind him, and then Cav would be behind me or Cav would be in front of me, and I remember him almost getting annoyed at me that I wasn't sitting with him all the time, and it's not a bad thing, I should be sat with him, but at the same time it's just a really weird situation that you're the world's in that front group, you're technically parading around a crit course, and you're coming into this final, and we got into the final, and I said to Cav, what do you want me to do? And he was like, follow me. I said, right, who are you going to follow? He said, Sagan. I was like, are you sure you've Sagan? He was like, yeah, I'm going to follow Sagan. I was like, all right, fair enough. So he followed Sagan, and I said, what do you want me to do? And he's like, if you see an opening on the left, go left, 400 to go, but don't kick too hard, just like smoothly do it. And I remember coming in, and I sat behind him, and at 400 to go, I pulled up next to him, and I looked back at, I don't think he's ever watched this, and I looked back, and I didn't say anything, and he knew I was there, and he said at the start of the week, I want to go left, because the way the course went, it swooped round to the right, and if you went on the right, 9 times out of 10 you would get boxed in. So he was like, I always want to go on the left. So started going on the left, round the outside, committed. He didn't follow me, idiot. And then, just swung off, and he got second, but he could have won, and he knew he could have won, and if he followed me, he knew he would have won. So tough one, because at almost the same time you look back on it now, and I'm like, man, I should have just told him to stay on my wheel. I should have just said, follow me, have some confidence, which is hard to tell Cav that. He's the fastest sprinter at the time, probably still is if he gets better, but it's easy to say that when you're looking back on it. But it'd be nice, looking back on it, I'd have just gone, man, just follow Tom Boonen, follow him, biggest guy there. He was full gas for him. If I'd have followed him, I might have been still on his wheel. I might have been able to get round him. You never know. So it's one of them things, isn't it? But looking back at it, even if I'm sure anyone in that situation, Cav's there, you back Cav 100%, because of that group, Cav can win. So that's what I did. And sadly, he didn't win, but it's elevated bike racing.
Could have won it yourself.
Yeah, I think I could have got top 3 maybe. Win, maybe not, but top 3. But yeah.
How bling would your World Championship?
Oh man, full white like Cipollini, like gone full in for it. Yeah, I'd have really got in.
I'll bet, because was that the year you were a British champion, 2016?
The year after.
The year after 2017. So, and you beat Cavendish to win that.
Yeah.
Again, it's another example of, on your day, you're capable of winning. Okay, that's not the biggest race, but you were beating the best guy in the world.
Yeah.
What do you still have ambitions? You're still pretty young. I mean, do you still have ambitions to win a big race? And what would be the race you would want to win?
For sure. To be honest, it's not a case of what race I'd want to win, because there's so many races that I'd like to win. But it's just being on the big stage. Doing them races where you're beating the best sprinters in the world. That might be. It might be a random chipper in Belgium where 90% of the best sprinters in the world have turned up to, and you do that, but it's not generally a race, where it's more a such of who's there. You could have a running race down the street, and if I'm beating Cav and Kittel, I'd be well happy, technically talking in bike terms, but do you know what I mean? You can go to a kermesse in Belgium, if Cav's there, Kittel's there, all the good sprinters in the world, if you take them there and you beat them, it's almost like Tour de Dubai. 90% of the sprinters there. If you get a good result there, it's sort of like, yeah, this is good. But it would be nice to go to the Tour and have a good crack there.
Has it been hard being off that stage for so much of the last 2 years?
It has and it hasn't. I've never done the tour, so it's sort of, I don't really know because I've not been there. But
generally, in terms of the races that Aqua Blue have been able to do, I mean, it's not been a week in, week out diet of the World Tour races. Have you found that a struggle?
The first year was really good. We were in Aqua Blue. We did a lot of the big races still. We did the Vuelta, which obviously amazing. Then this year, yeah, big struggle. It was, everyone knows about the bike. Didn't help things. So, yeah.
Did the riders have any say in that, or was that
nothing,
no say?
Nothing at all.
So you have to ride the equipment, even with misgivings over the single speed.
Get given what you're given, and that's
Shaming,
it. Yeah. So we had no say in it really. It was just the decision was made, and that was that. So we had to get on with it. Couldn't really do anything about it. So we just got on with it and did what we could. But it was just, I got to Belgium. I've got nothing against Belgium. But going day in, day out, and we were staying in one of the directors' houses, which was great. But it's just
your face tells said otherwise.
It's almost like being juniors. You just be staying in like a dormitory almost. Which you're a professional team. You look at Cofidis, they're doing the tour. They've got all these training camps, and it's just one day you'd have to make your own breakfast and you'd have to load a dishwasher. And I know that sounds really petty for normal life, but if you are in a professional bike team and you have to load a dishwasher, come on, it's terrible. So yeah, that was the bit that was getting hard, going to race and feeling like a junior.
But everything kind of chipping away at the confidence and enthusiasm, I guess, if you're not happy on the bike and you're not happy off the bike.
Oh god, yeah, you get to a race and 90% of the people in the team would just be like, oh, here we are again, and some days there's some races where like one person would finish the race, and it's nothing to do with the performance or the training, because it's like I said to the guys this year, all my numbers this year have been better than they ever have been, like ever. So it wasn't I was creeping or anything like that, but if someone, you go in someone's house and you've got to make an omelette in the morning before a big race, or you've got to travel 3 hours to a race when you're not staying in a hotel 20 minutes away. It's all these little things where you're just like, we're training so hard and trying to do everything right, and this is what you're doing for us? You're just giving us this and this and this, and it is... Yeah.
Did you feel any extra kind of pressure because being one of the kind of the voices of the team, one of the more upbeat characters? Did you feel like you were having to chivvy other people along a bit as well? Is that?
I didn't feel like that. You tried to help people along. Of course, you got to keep your morale high in these situations, and it's hard to be the voice of sort of reason as such. It's hard to G people up when you know things are really a bit crap, really. So it's trying to say something's not black when it's black, it's very hard.
We were mentioning James Shaw, earlier, who's at the start of his career and has had this big setback, but I guess you're a kind of a great example of persistence, and we're talking about the tour there, and when you think about it, on a team like Lotto, where your role will be to help Caleb Ewan, you got a very good chance, I would think, of going to the tour next year. Yeah,
I'd like to think so. I really want to give it a good shot and go there. Get a good start of the season and really try and nail the first 4 months, and then you go from there. I think that will be the main thing, is just to start well, get a good relationship with Caleb, hopefully win some bike races with him, and then hopefully that relationship we can carry on and make it a long-term thing with him.
So is Adam Blythe, who now lives in the north of England with his partner, I don't think you're married, are you? Partner, nope. and Thanks, baby,
mate. Pressure,
and twins on the way. I mean, is he a very different person to the Adam Blythe who lived in Monaco a few years ago? Completely different.
Yeah, I just grown up with it. I've got responsibilities now. I've got more than myself to look after. I've got a family that I need to feed and take care of, and win some bike racing and earn some money, and
I'm asking for a friend here, but how do you find the energy to ride a bike with a 15-month-old? I mean, I'm struggling to find the energy to come on the train half an hour into London.
Yeah.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It does change everything. You just got to take my hat off to my missus. She looks after him a hell of a lot. I miss him like crazy at the moment. He's just growing up to where he's starting to say a few words and this, that and the other. So it is very hard, but...
Bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Bidon.
Yeah. It's just... You got to be quite selfish in a way, and it's a short career, so you got to, now I know that obviously you got to make the most of it, earn the money while you can, and do the best you can to support them.
But you'd given yourself a date by which, if you hadn't got a contract for next year, you would look elsewhere. So I mean, that's kind of the ultimate in growing up, I guess.
It is. I said middle of October, if I haven't got anything, that's it. I'm going to hang up my wheels and move on from there. I think when you sort of get to grips with that, you sort of go, oh no, this is not good, I don't feel ready to stop. And I sort of convinced myself I was stopping, and I looked at what else I could do, speaking to a few people of job opportunities and things like that, but man, real world's hard. So yeah, I was happy to get another contract and give it another go. And being in that situation this year, I don't want to be in that situation again for a good 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years yet. So yeah, got to make the most of it.
Are you thinking in those terms of going another on the bike another into your mid-30s and perhaps beyond? Or
yeah, for sure. Easy life bike riding. It doesn't sound it, but it is an easy life. Whereas John Dibbon's in the room at the moment, and like the real world works hard. Like, we are in bed now, me and John are in bed until 12 o'clock, come down for a bit of lunch, go to the track at 3, have a massage, sit around for a bit, have a bit more to eat, jump on the track, get off, lay in bed till 10 in the morning. I mean, it's easy, isn't it? We're not getting up, going behind a desk, sending 20 emails and all that kind of thing, and that's before 10 o'clock. So yeah, it's a hard sport, but a very easy lifestyle, really.
It takes years to kind of come to that realisation, because if 29-year-old Adam Blythe had told 22-year-old Adam Blythe that, I suspect he wouldn't have believed it.
No, with a glass of rosé in my hand going, nah, you're all right.
So that was Adam Blythe speaking in London a couple of weeks ago, and well, Lionel, you were there, but he was very interesting, wasn't he? We had a lot of ground to cover, because you realise, speaking to him, just what a lot. He's still quite young, that's the funny thing, but he's ridden for so many big teams and with so many big riders, and has had a real kind of up and down career, and still a couple of chapters left to write, I suspect.
Yeah, and I think now we've done that kind of establishing interview, if you like, sort of laid out the roadmap of Blythe's career so far. It'd be really good to go back to him and really drill down into specific years or specific experiences that he's had, because one of the points he made, staying in the sport and getting a contract year after year, and having to go down a step in order to come back up again. That's not all that common. Riders who slip down, often it's a one-way journey, that, and so it says a lot about his force of character and his temperament as much as anything. The way that he has carved out a niche for himself that is recognised by people who are doing the hiring.
Yeah, and very interesting his sort of pragmatic approach to it, which seems to have been instilled in him by Tim Harris when he went to Belgium, about realising that the best way to make a long career was to have a speciality, but also to look on cycling as a business. And some interesting comments around that. Some, maybe there'll be fans of cycling that won't really enjoy hearing that to some extent, but it's the reality for a lot of professional riders. It is their livelihood. It is a business, and Blythe is one of the great survivors, I suppose. As you say, very unusual to fall out the World Tour and then go back in. Linus Gerdman didn't quite do that, but he came and went. He had a year out at one point, didn't he? Another one I was thinking was Larry Warbass as well. He's twice fallen out the World Tour and also got back in on 2 occasions, hasn't he? Because he was at BMC, then he joined I Am Cycling, who weren't World Tour, but then they became World Tour, and then he obviously went back to Aqua Blue Sport, and then next year joining AG2R again. He's the only other one I can think of who's done that.
Yeah, I think you make that point of what fans will make of a professional talking in quite pragmatic terms about what is basically their job. I think Adam Blythe clearly enjoys cycling. He enjoys the job of cycling, enjoys being a teammate, enjoys doing the bulk of the work that riders like him have to do. And I think there's a kind of a fracture between enjoyment and the romance of it. I think from the outside, we're tempted to believe that it is this romantic world, and probably a lot of riders realise very soon, or all riders realise very soon, that it's you've got to make yourself useful if you're going to stay employed. You can't sort of, unless you're Warren Barguil, you can't ride around fantasising about picking the daisies and blowing the dandelions.
Right, well, we should leave it there for this week, Lionel. We'll be back with Daniel next week, unless something happens between now and then.
Well, no, we won't, will we? We'll be in Cardiff. We'll be recording on the road
sorry,
with Orla.
I forgot. Yeah, of course. Sorry.
We'll be back with
Okay.
Daniel in a fortnight.
Yes, apologies. But as I said, we have got our Friends special coming out next week on retirement, and it's a two-parter, 2 long episodes. But I think there's some really interesting stuff. Part 1 is us discussing through all the ideas that were submitted, and that was, I listened back to that. It was quite fun. There was Francois Tomaso in his nest in the back of the car, chipping in with his thoughts, and yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah,
Is that how you do it? We're doing it like that, are we? Part 1 is going to be that conversation, and then part 2 the actual episode. Oh, what a good idea.
Yeah, thanks,
That is a
Lionel.
good idea.
Yeah. Well, actually, don't thank me. I mean, our guest editor, Stephen Harris, is obviously the creative brains behind this.
Thank you, Stephen. My concern is, will people have made their way through this 2-part piece before our War and Peace style Grand Tour Diaries?
The Grand Tour Diaries are coming together, and anyone who read our book will know the sort of style. It's the story behind the story. Each of us, Daniel, me, Lionel, Francois, and Orla Shinawee at the Women's Tour kept diaries this year, and those diaries will form, well, they'll be the first 4 Friends specials, won't they, of 2019, and they'll all be released before 2019 even starts.
Yeah, but we're so good to our listeners and friends of the podcast that these 4 episodes only count as one, don't they?
Oh, I don't know.
I think
I
so.
guess, why not?
I think so. Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, we want to deliver value for people.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's debatable whether they count, because there's so little cycling content in my diaries that people might feel that they've been shortchanged.
Yeah. Well, I've got a bit of cycling in mind. Don't worry.
Oh, that's good. That's good. The balance will be right then.
Let's leave it there. And we'll be back next week. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to become a friend of the podcast, thecyclingpodcast.com. But in the meantime, thank you, Lionel.
Thank you, Richard.